Good evening. My name is Ellen Hanson, and I was raised in a Lutheran faith-based home by two loving parents, Earl and Joyce Vorpagel, with 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Our neighborhood was primary Catholic, so we fit right in. We had the right number of kids. During the summer months, when it was too hot to be outside, the kids would come to our home because it was air-conditioned. That's what my father did for a living. In the basement, we had the perfect setup for a school classroom, desks and all. That is where we would pretend we were in school, and when chosen to be the teacher, I was thrilled. One day, I announced to my mother, "I want to be a nun." And she said, "Ellen, there's a little problem with that. First of all, you're not Catholic. They don't marry, and they don't have children." And she knew that children were important to me. It didn't take long for me to change my mind, but it made me wonder what purpose God had for me. The card that was given to you tonight, and if you didn't get one, I have some more, so please ask, is one that I received as a child in Sunday school. And yes, it's still in print. I love the picture of Jesus gently knocking, and I knew I was going to let him in. We even learned a song in Sunday school about Jesus knocking on the door. Revelation 3:20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him." Or my favorite translation, "Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him and he with me." That is the relationship I wanted to have with Jesus. It offered hope. He would be my friend, and all I had to do was believe. And I had to open the door. For me, it was easy. We went to church as a family, Sunday school, sang in the junior choir, and I was very active in our church families. First at St. Paul Lutheran in Lyons, later at Cross Lutheran in Burlington. We prayed in the home, we read the Bible, I embraced Luther's small catechism, and was hungry to grow in my faith. I wanted Jesus to be my best friend. Throughout my life, I had witnessed my parents always welcoming others into our home. There were times when we were just sitting down to eat, there'd be a knock at the door, my mother would jump up from her chair, open the door, set another place, and have that person join us for fellowship and a good meal. There was always room around that already crowded table, and somehow plenty of food. That door said welcome. Of course, I also remember when my mother would get that phone call from one of the neighbors warning her that the Jehovah's Witnesses were in the neighborhood. And before she could move to another part of the house to pretend she wasn't home, the doorbell would ring and one of her children would run and answer it only to announce, "Mom, it's a stranger, it's for you." I sensed the reluctance, but she would politely go to the door, and I'm assuming she was professing her faith. She said goodbye and closed the door. The door said, "You are safe." A side note, that when we later had a home of our own and the Jehovah's Witnesses came into the neighborhood, I would open the door, invite them in, get out my Bible, and tell them all about my wonderful church family. After a while, I got the feeling that the mark of the Lamb was above my door, for they passed over. They often didn't return. The time finally came, and I was able to go to confirmation. My older brother Earl seemed to enjoy it, so I was eager to begin my rite of passage into adulthood. This meant I would be able to join Luther League, which went to church conventions. They met weekly with their peers, fellowship, food, Bible study, enjoying time with other teenagers, and we went to our sister church at St. Mary's in Kenosha. At last, at the age of 14, I was able to vote, teach Sunday school on my own, join the adult choir, and finally put my church portion of my babysitting money into a large envelope rather than the small Sunday school envelope. We met every Saturday for 2 years. I could have had a master's degree after that. And I could not wait, not only to affirm my faith, but it would be the first time that I would be at the Lord's Supper and take part. As May 25th was approaching, plans were being made. My mother was busy making a wonderful meal. 4 generations of relatives would be present. My grandma Stephan was making me a new dress. A hair appointment was made at the beauty parlor, and that was the first time I'd ever been in one. My new white adult baptismal gown was ironed, just waiting for that red carnation to be pinned on. It was time to meet with the Reverend Leo G. Munch, and then I would be ready. The purpose of this meeting was a time for him to know you better. But that was not a problem, for his daughter Mary and I were friends. We had been to each other's homes, and our families had a great relationship. It would also give him a sense of where we are in our faith journey. He had to pick a Bible verse that suited us, one we would grow into, our life verse, so to speak. At that time, I had not been to many funerals, but he told us it was often read there as well. For me, I had grown to love Matthew 7:7, and actually it appears twice, again in Luke 11, verse 9 as well, where Jesus was teaching his disciples to pray. It says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds, and to him who knocks, the door will be opened." Now, Reverend Munch was a small man, but very authoritative. And I am sure at that meeting I did not say a whole lot, but I knew I had hinted that this was the verse I wanted. My brother had one about making disciples of all nations, and he wanted to be a pastor. So I had no doubt when I left that meeting that he knew. At last, it was a beautiful day. I'm ready. The meal has been prepared. The table's set. I had my new clothes on. The relatives were there, and front and center were my godparents, Glenn Stephan and Ruth Klapstein, which my parents could not have chosen better people for me. The confirmation class of 25 processed down the aisle singing, "With solemn joy we come, dear Lord." It's not in the current hymnal. And when it came together to gather around the communion rails so we could affirm our faith, our belief, I was overwhelmed with anticipation and filled with great joy. At last, we were all kneeling at that table, and I knew that I was going to get my verse. Each name was read, the bell tolled, the questions were asked and answered, and I was kneeling and continued to pray, "Please, I need my verse." At last, the Reverend Munch comes to me, and I knew he was going to get it right. God certainly must have revealed to him what my heart was yearning for. Finally, he reads the verse. It's Psalm 55:22. "Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall suffer the righteous to be moved." My shoulders sank, my head lowered even more, and I choked back the tears. Really? Could he not get it? Was I to live a life of burdens? Would God give me the strength to sustain them? Was that the only time I could seek the Lord? My relationship would be one where I would only bring my burdens to him? It was not the one I had envisioned. The door said, "Cry here." The blessing was given, his hand on my head, and I thought, I hope that hairspray your hand sticks, and then you can change your mind and read Matthew 7:7. So you may wonder, now what does she do? To question him was not even a thought. It was something you simply did not do. I later learned that he also gave that verse to 2 of my siblings. The door was about forgiveness. As the years passed, I often reflected on that verse, tried to make sense of it, and when those tough times came along, those trials, I felt I could not endure without my faith. And how was I going to get through this? Life got complicated. Things like dating, marriage, children, work, jobs, careers, school, illnesses, lost relationships, mental health issues and alcoholism, financial struggles, let alone the loss of loved ones, including a child. We became even more involved in our church and embraced so many meaningful and lasting relationships. We served the Lord in so many areas using the gifts he had given us, and here at Emmanuel, our lives have been further enriched. Every morning before my day begins, I take time to pray for people that I feel could use some extra thought. I read a devotion, and this year is from a book entitled My Time with God by Joyce Meyer. When I opened it today, this is what it said from 1 Peter 5:7. casting the whole of your care, all your anxieties, all your worries, all your concerns, once and for all, on him. For he cares for you affectionately and cares about you watchfully. How ironic. In closing, I know I will continue to work on my relationship with God, to have a deeper understanding, to still ask, to seek the truth, and to knock. During my life, I have pounded on that door. I sometimes gave a gentle tap or a regular knock, or perhaps wipe my feet on the mat to rid the dirt, to enter with clean shoes, and sometimes remove them altogether so I could start fresh. There are times I would ring the doorbell to perhaps avoid the door, but each and every time I have learned, this door is always open, always there, and always waiting. Amen.